बिस्मिल्लाहिर्रहमानिर्रहीम नहमदुहु व नसल्लिहि अला रसूलिल करीम व अला आलिहि व सहाबिहि अजमाइन अम्मा बाद. This is an English translation of the talk Mujahidah and Riyazat by Hazrat Maulana Mufti Muhammad Taqi Usmani Damat Barakatahum. Hazrat Thanvi Rahmatullah Alayhi said, opposing the impulse and drive to commit a sin is called Mujahidah, or a sustained effort. That impulse arises from some spiritual illness or weakness. The weakening or attenuation of that spiritual illness with sustained effort is called Riyazat. Hazrat Thanvi Rahmatullah said that when a person's nafs or inner self tries to make him commit a sin again and again, then forcefully opposing oneself from committing that sin is Mujahidah. As a result of that sustained effort over a period of time, the internal psychological trait or moral trait which was giving rise to those repeated impulses to commit that sin become weakened. This weakening of the internal moral trait is called Riyazat. Sometimes a person has to give up halal activities in order to stay away from haram or unlawful activities, lest his nafs lead him from halal to haram activities. For example, sometimes Sufi saints say that do not eat until your stomach is full. Eat a little bit less than that. Is eating till one's stomach is full haram? No, it is not. But they say so because eating less than a full stomach is a mujahidah or an effort for nafs. And the benefit of this mujahidah will be that the person's nafs will learn to do things against his wishes, which will then help the person in resisting the impulses to commit sins. Hazrat Thanvi Rahmatullah used to say that the mujahidah of eating less that Sufis of previous times made their disciples do is not useful these days. The physical constitution of people in those times were stronger and they used to have larger diets, so the mujahidah of eating less did not harm their physical health. Rather, it used to act as a tool for keeping their nafs in check. But this eating less was relative to their own diets. The amount of less eating than Imam Ghazali Rahmatullah has mentioned in Ihya al-Ulum was so much that it would be sufficient for two people like us today. That is why Hazrat Dr. Abdullahi Arfi Rahmatullah used to say that these days the amount of eating less should be that a person only eats as much as he needs to and then stops eating anymore. And the way to recognize that one has eaten enough is that while eating, there comes a point when the person starts thinking whether he should eat any more or not. He should stop eating at that point. This is sufficient mujahidah for eating less these days. If a person eats one or two more helpings at that point, is it a sin? No, it's not. It's permissible. But the reason he is being asked to not eat any more is to perform mujahidah, to make his nafs or inner self used to not giving in to wishes and desires all the time. Once someone asked Maulana Yaqub Nanotwi Rahmatullah Alayh, Hazrat, why do Sufis sometimes forbid those activities which Allah Ta'ala has declared halal? For example, Allah Ta'ala has permitted eating, but they say, don't eat as much. Allah Ta'ala has permitted sleeping, but Sufis say, don't sleep as much. Allah Ta'ala has made socialization with people permitted and talking to them, but Sufis say, don't talk as much. Why is that? Hazrat Nanotwi Rahmatullah gave that person a piece of paper and asked him to fold it in half. He did. Then he asked him to open the fold and straighten the paper. But despite many attempts, the paper wouldn't stay straight because of the fold line. Hazrat Nanotwi Rahmatullah said, now fold it in the opposite direction and try to straighten it. The person was able to straighten the paper then. Hazrat Nanotwi Rahmatullah then said, a person's nafs is also bent towards sins. When you try to bring it back to moderation, it doesn't stay there. The trick is to bend it to the other side and make it give up halal things as well. Once it gets used to giving up halal activities as well, it will develop moderation, and then it will become easier for it to refrain from sins and from disobeying Allah Ta'ala. Our nafs has become used to committing sins. May Allah Ta'ala protect us. For example, our eyes have become used to inappropriate staring and drawing pleasure from it. On the other hand, Allah Ta'ala has said in the Noble Quran, "Tell the believing men that they must lower their gazes." Surah 24, verse 30. If a person is going to the market and looks this way or that way, is it permissible or impermissible? It is permitted as long as he is looking at those objects which he is permitted to look at, like cars or buildings. But because the eyes are used to committing sins, and he repeatedly keeps getting impulses to stare at inappropriate places, therefore he has been instructed as a precaution and a preventive strategy that when you walk in the bazaar, lower your gaze, because if you keep looking at what is permissible to look at, sooner or later your gaze will fall on what is haram to look at. A human being's nafs is weak. It is likely to engage in sin in those circumstances. But if you keep your gaze low, you will remain safe. Hazrat Thanvi Rahmatullah said that when Satan was condemned by Allah Ta'ala, he vowed that if you are condemning me because I refuse to prostrate before a human being, then I'll attack the human beings to mislead him from the front, from the back, from his right side, and from his left side. But he forgot to mention two directions, from the top and from the bottom. It means that these two directions, that is above and below, are safe from the attack of Satan. If you turn your gaze towards your right, the Satan can mislead you. If you turn your gaze towards your left side, he can mislead you, and same with front and back. But he cannot mislead you if you look above or below. However, if you look with your gaze upwards, you run the risk of falling down. Therefore, the only safe way is that you walk with your gaze lowered. Then, inshallah, Allah Ta'ala will keep you safe from the attacks of Satan. The primary objective is not to stare at what Allah Ta'ala has forbidden us to stare at. But because it is difficult to control one's gaze when one starts doing this, when we have been ordered to lower our gaze and not to stare here and there, even at things which we have been permitted to look at otherwise. This is Mujahidah. When one keeps practicing this, then a person stops staring at inappropriate places, and if by any chance it happens, he will move his gaze away immediately. Once a person reaches that stage, then he is not forbidden to look here and there. It is permissible to look at whatever Allah Ta'ala has allowed us to look at. The point here is that when a person starts the effort of abstaining from haram, sometimes he has to abstain from halal as well in the beginning. This is what is known as Mujahidah. When a person keeps doing Mujahidah or sustained effort over a period of time, eventually he begins to tame the negative moral traits in his nafs. For example, he previously had excessive love of material wealth, excessive love of material world, excessive physical desires, excessive anger. Now all of these get tamed and come within the bounds of Sharia. The process of taming all these negative attributes and bringing them under control is called Riyazat. However, even after these negative attributes of nafs have been tamed, a person is supposed to keep monitoring them all the time. It does not work like that. Once a person has tamed them, they stay tamed forever. Hazrat Mufti Muhammad Shafi Rahmatullah Alayh used to say that this is a terminal illness. One has to keep monitoring it till his last moment, that he is not doing anything under the influence of these negative internal attributes, that they are not becoming stronger again. The reason for this is that these negative moral traits do not go away completely as a result of Mujahidah. they just become attenuated or weakened. If we start neglecting them, they can always rise up again and lead a person to committing sins. That is why one has to always remain careful. As Maulana Rumi Rahmatullah Alayh said, Andari rah mi tarasho mi kharash, ta dame akhir dame farigh mabash. On this path, one always has to keep developing, keep evolving. There can be no free moment till the last breath comes.